So, can you introduce yourself to our listeners?
Happy to do it. I'm Joe Jennings, and I'm also Space Cowboy at this point in my life. I guess I'm Space Cowboy for the rest of my life, but yeah, that's me.
I'm Marah Strauch. I'm the co-director, producer of Space Cowboy.
And I am Bryce Leavitt. I am the other co-director and producer of Space Cowboy.
So, your film, Space Cowboy, is the story of skydiving cinematographer Joe Jennings. What inspired you to tell his story?
Well, I met Joe and was instantly kind of captivated and mesmerized by his career, his craft. He was a self-proclaimed free fall cinematographer, which is something I had never heard of before. He was filming aerial scenes and stunts for Hollywood movies, big brand commercials, had this, long spanning career kind of pioneering, revolutionizing it, and was, blown away by that. And then struck up a friendship with Joe and started learning about his personal life and his personal journey and some of the demons he's battled, and was even more interested and blown away by that. And so, kind of when those two things merged, I knew that it was a story that needed to be told and could be a really compelling film. So I set out. At the time, I hadn't made a film, and so I was looking for mentorship, advice, and I ended up tracking down Marah, who um, was a really experienced and skilled filmmaker, and she was kind enough to give me some advice early on, and then I somehow just kept calling her until I roped her in as a co-conspirator.
Amazing. So, Marah, you're no stranger to TIFF. Your feature debut, Sunshine Superman, was part of the festival 10 years ago. Bryce, this is your debut, and Joe being the subject of the film. What was it like to see the reception at the world premiere for each of you?
For me, it was, a return, a homecoming, obviously having Tom Powers here to support. He was here the first time for Sunshine Superman and has been a really great friend through the process of having my films out there in the world. And coming back to TIFF, it actually played in the IMAX theater that Sunshine Superman had played in
Oh.
10 years ago. It was absolutely emotional. It was wonderful. And it was great to be here with, Bryce and kind of, shepherd him into this world as well. And TIFF audiences are awesome. So it was a wonderful experience, and we're very, very grateful.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was incredible just to watch, our final film up on the big screen was surreal. To be around, an audience and feel their energy and feel them just feel the things that we were hoping they would, get excited at the big moments, tense at the tense moments, and the ups and the downs, and then I don't know, to finally share it was just, it's hard to describe, but for me it was incredible.
I just wanted people to like it. I remember coming up here, I literally had a dream where my wife and I are sitting in the middle of the theater watching this thing with like 5 people around us, and everybody else having walked out, right? You worry, you know? And we told each other again and again coming up here, no matter how people take it, we're going to go up, we're going to have a good time, nothing's going to bother us. It's like, yeah, right, you do care. And the reception that we got, it felt great. And I was surprised that, after each screening, the questions that came out of the audience, I mean, there were a few about skydiving, and then there were a bunch from people just going, hey, I cope with this and that, and maybe how did you deal with that, or here's my experience, and people were just sharing all their own stuff, and it just kind of affirms that like very few of us get to our adulthood without taking some hits along the way, and life is not easy, really, for any of us. So that was great. Yeah, that was really great.
That's really beautiful to hear that people were coming up after and sharing their personal stories, because it means like obviously you did something right, you hit them in the right place, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, the angle they took, I didn't really know what to expect. It kind of evolved as it went, right? And Bryce was just curious right from the start when we first met. You know, I had been approached by other producers about doing a life story. One of them was, you know, supposed to be kind of a reality show, and the other one was sort of a life story show. And every time, you know, that when it would go into development, it was all about trying to create a persona. And almost always it was like, you know, well, we kind of need you to be a little bit more, you know, macho and leader, and we need to see some controversy. We need to see some problems, blow-ups on the set, et cetera, et cetera. And it just felt like, wow, we're going to have to just step up and act like we're not who we are. I just knew, you know, I couldn't really do it. That didn't happen here. You know, they just showed up with questions, and I found myself answering them. And here it is.
Yeah. So going through the footage, the wealth of footage that you provide seems like such a daunting task. How did you go through all of that in addition to what you recorded and piece it all together?
Well, I tend to get myself into really archivally heavy documentaries because my background is in editing. I edited for 10 years before I had Sunshine Superman out. This film was made by a group of editors, Eric Brueggemann, Jay Davis, Brian Getz, and myself. And it was a lot of watching. You know, for us, it's very important to watch all the footage. And I think, you know, a lot of people don't do that. And I think in doing that, you find the truly amazing gems. And I think for us, you know, that's like Christmas. That's like what we love doing. So it's a pleasure. I think this one, it was really about finding the things that we were excited about and really trying to make sure that we were using the best. And of course, there's hours and hours that are the best that are on the floor, you know, because there's so much Joe Jennings.
Amazing. Joe, is there pressure to outdo your last dive every time? Because you've been taking it to the next level and next level. And how do you balance that with safety? We see you in the film trying to balance that.
You know, you do want to raise the bar. You want to do things that are better and better. In fact, you know, a lot of this movie was about trying to, you know, I've done a lot of cars over my career, and we got cars to fly wheels to earth. In fact, we're the only team that figured out how to get a car out the right way onto the air and keep it wheels to earth. But all of the cars would rock around and fly all over the sky, and nobody, including us, had managed to calm a car down and literally get it to fall wheels to earth, you know? So in this movie, you know, we were literally doing a project where we were raising the bar on our own work. So that, you know, that was kind of cool, and it was nice to show, you know, and the fact that we were able to make it happen, I was really happy because it was kind of like, great, we get to do this documentary and show something really beautiful at the same time. So that was great. As far as you know, continuing to raise the bar, I'm actually, you know, one of the things that I've learned as a stunt coordinator is to just clearly tell the people that I'm working with that a lot of times we're being hired to sell coffee or, you know, Gatorade or soda or something like that. And, you know, our work is not important enough for us to push ourselves outside of what we're capable of safely doing. And sometimes productions will happen, and to the producers, it's the most, you know, they're obsessed with getting a really good shot, you know, and so it becomes very important, and, you know, the energy gets really intense, and sometimes that'll cause somebody to push past what they really should be doing. And that's something I try to push back on, you know, right out the gate with everybody I work with. So, yeah, we do try to raise the bar, but we try to do it staying within, like, what we've trained to do.
Yeah, totally.
and especially after having kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have kids, and it changes your attitude a bit. The things that used to, if you have a close call, back in the day, it was like, you go out with your friends, have a beer, and brag about it, and like it's really fun,
Mm-hmm.
right? After you have kids, like that wasn't fun anymore. You had a close call and you did not like it, so it changes your approach.
Yeah, for sure. The film is so entertaining, inspirational, and at times pretty heartbreaking. How did you approach balancing these themes of grief, mental health? You mentioned children as well, and that impacting that as well.
You can pass back and forth. When Bryce came to me with the project, he had started to assemble stuff, and he had like a sizzle, and I love the footage of skydiving. I love the footage of these amazing aerial things happening. But what I loved even more was the mental health angle and the family dynamics that were happening. I felt like it was, it's what made this film really special. And I think, the balance is always really hard to strike, right? Because there are a lot of documentaries that very much are covering mental health or covering things in a way that wouldn't be kind of fun, and it's a fun film about depression, and death. And I think, for me, that's what the best films are. They're not just like one thing. They're not one note. They're many notes. And Bryce and I think during this entire process, really thought about kind of the balance. And I think doing this modern day car stunt was really helpful in terms of having something that was really fun and really lightened the tone. Do you have anything to add?
No, that kind of nailed it, but I think it was definitely, like I said at the beginning, I was quickly became more fascinated with the human interest side of this story than the skydiving, which says a lot because the skydiving, like Marah says, is incredible. So that was something that was always really important to me, and I think it was something that I'm glad that Marah was my partner on this, because I think she really brought out a good side of finding a lot of the humanity in that in the archive, which sounds kind of simple, but is incredibly, incredibly nuanced and focused process. It's going through, hundreds of hours of footage and trying to find these little tiny nuggets that thread your themes a little bit better. And so I think Marah and our editing team doing that mixed with kind of approaching Joe from an organic, non-agended fashion and just letting some of that story just come out. Those two things, I think, really bring that out in the film, and I'm really proud about where we got with that side of the story.
Yeah. So documentaries are interesting because there isn't always a set structure. You can kind of make it up a little bit as you go. And the film had these two storylines, one about the car stunt and then one going through Joe's life with all the archival footage, as you mentioned. So was it always like that with the two storylines? Was that the earliest version of it?
Yeah, I keep saying to people when they're asking me about that, that another thing that fascinated me was that Joe, when I met him, was creeping up on being 60 years old and was still full blown doing his craft. He was still skydiving full time. He was trying to get big commercials, trying to push the limits. And so I feel like that was an important piece of the story, that his story was still unfolding. So I didn't want to do your typical, archive mixed with talking head interview, best highlight, cradle to the grave, best highlights. I wanted to do something fresh and something that included what Joe was pursuing in the present day, to reveal more of his character and give a fresh pacing to the story. So that was definitely something that I wanted to do from like the very beginning, and now we'll let Marah talk about actually accomplishing that is a little bit of a harder thing in the edit. It's a really big balance. So that was something that I don't necessarily know that we had a real plan for, and I don't really think you can have a plan for that. You kind of have to let you have to let it evolve. So definitely that was always part of our the structure that we hoped for and wanted, but the execution was a little more delicate.
And I mean, actually, I think we do a lot of planning. I think when I first started being a filmmaker, I was like, I don't like outlines. I'm just going to let it happen. Now I do a lot of outlining, and it changes. But, you know, you start to structure it even before you, or I start to structure something, particularly if it's already happened, or we know what outcome we hope will be. It could be a different outcome. You know, the car could have never flown. You know, we could have had a different film. But, you know, you kind of outline for the story that you would like it to be, and then you have to adjust to what that is once you started editing and once you've started really seeing how long things will play out and how long things can keep your attention and just how much screen time you need for each thing. And I think it was really hard how to figure out how to kind of thread the car and the, you know, the stuff in the garage, and, you know, and we had a lot of amazing producers, but there's always notes, there's always, you know, there's just a lot to balance in terms of finding, you know, and making it so it's not 3 hours long. I think there's a lot of, again, I think a lot of that's into editing.
Yeah. And it was edited together so beautifully. I think it struck the perfect balance.
Good, thank
I
you.
like it. Awesome. That's great. Good.
Yeah, I loved it. I'm curious, there's so much film, there's so many movies out right now. Why do you think that this is a timely story? Why did this story need to be told right now, from your perspective?
Great question. I think one, there is a little bit of a trend of the last couple years of high-profile athletes, other people in the public eye that are being vulnerable and talking about their mental health, and that's something that's been taboo forever. So I think certain people, based on either their status or their profession, like Joe, you kind of look at like, oh, they're a rock star. They have the best job in the world. They must be the happiest people. And sometimes those people are struggling emotionally more than anybody else, and definitely as much as anybody else, right? The normal person. And so I think it's a good it's a good tale of empathy, to just know that everybody is dealing with their own version of kind of these core demons that we all might, as Joe said, get damaged by throughout our lives. So I think that was something that is really timely about it. And then what Marah mentioned too is, I think it's, for us, it's incredibly nice and also I think incredibly powerful that this is a happy story about those things. This is a uplifting tale about how just because you're living with those things doesn't need to stop you from doing the things you love to do and being happy and living a great life. So I think the combination of vulnerability mixed with like uplifting makes it something that I think could be really useful to the world that maybe needs a smile here or there right now.
If I could add to that. You know, I think like you hear pundits, especially today with like the culture wars and everything that are happening, and it's like you hear this pushback like, oh wow, it's like depression has become fashionable. Look at all these people coming out and talking about it. But it's like coming out and talking about anything that people hide about themselves. You know, 15 years ago, I'd walk into a drugstore to try some, you know, I'm trying some new drug and I'm going to pick it up, and a neighbor would walk in and I'd say hello to them and go buy shampoo and walk out, you know. Just because, you know, we've hidden things for so long, you know, and with the culture wars, like, I'm not a fan of bullies. I was bullied a lot as a kid, and I see it as bullying. It's bullying against the LGBT community. It's bullying against anybody that's coming out and saying, I'm not part of like this normal, uniformed group of people. You know, I'm different. And I suppose there's going to be some pushback, whether it's, LGBT issues or whether it's depression or anything else. I'm not a fan of the culture wars right now, but it is what it is.
Anything to add on it being time?
I think these two guys really laid it out. I think it is about that also Yes, I think Joe really hit it. I think it's this time where it's really important to kind of be the thing we are, right? And to show people that that's okay. And, you know, during the making of this film, I went through a lot of the same childhood as Joe did. And it was really a learning experience for me to make this film, like very healing, very, you know, very meaningful to me. And I think people are being able to talk about things and really heal them in a way that, you know, at least in my time on Earth, I have not seen it happen as much as it's happening now.
Well, and think about it too, you know, kids.
Yeah.
Right? Kids who are growing up, it's not easy to be a kid. And, you know, if they can see that other people are, you know, experiencing the same things they are, they can see it's out there, it exists, I'm not alone with it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Just so, and I'm going to add this because I forgot to say it, and just for our audience right now, just so they don't think this is some dark and gloomy tale, the other thing that I find timely about this is that it's not, you know, this mental health angle that we've talked about is something that we thread throughout and we explore for sure, but I think the other thing that we explore even more is what Joe's doing in the sky is his unique form of art and healing to these things. And so I think this is the other thing that's timely about this film is just inspiring people to find their release, find their self-expression in any form, no matter how wild or wacky or adrenaline fueled, and chase that passion, obsess over that passion, because it can bring you so many good things if you do. So that's something else.
I love that. That's great.
Amazing. Final question. You mentioned this as like, this is your art. Do you have any advice for artists, documentarians who are going into the field?
Definitely be ready to run a marathon. It is not an overnight. There's no instant gratification in this crazy career that we've chosen.
Ready for a lot of no's?
A lot of no's, but there's some really, really, really good people in this industry, and Marah and I were just talking the other day. I think the documentary, specifically the medium of documentaries, is one of the most raw and intimate and vulnerable forms of storytelling that there is. You're inhabiting a real person's life, and so it's incredibly rewarding. So my advice to people starting out in the field would be to, one, just stay consistent, stay optimistic, and keep just putting the work in every day, and be willing to learn. Know what you don't know, and seek mentorship, seek help, keep learning, and I think you'll break through, especially if you have a story that you're passionate about. You can't help but not break through if you keep pushing it.
And Bryce covered it very well, and I think something Bryce was really good at doing, which I was not as good at doing, was knowing what you don't know and knowing how to be open to advice and really, doing that, but also finding your own voice. I think there's a lot of push right now to make really celebrity-driven big projects, and it's really, that's how you get them seen. And I think there's also this really lovely thing about making films that you just really love and you're not seeing. And I think making art should feel like art, and keeping to making sure that what you're doing feels good to you and enlivens your life. I think also learning to edit is a really good thing and super helpful. It teaches you a lot.
I just find when I talk to young folks, I just try to remind them that, you're young. You don't need a lot. You can, all you need is a bed and the basics and some food. You can live in a house with a bunch of other people. You don't need a bunch of money right out the gate, right? So you have time to do what you want. There'll come a point in your life when you might have a house and cars and kids, and then you really do have some responsibilities there. But while you're young, if you want to be a director, be a director. If you want to make documentaries, right? Whatever you want to do, you know, you have time, this is like your big opportunity to just go and do things that you like doing. And chances are, you know, if you really like doing it, you're going to do pretty well.
Amazing. Thank you all so much for your time.
Thank you. That was great. Good questions.